Hello, everybody. We are just going to head straight into it, beginning with HS Shivaprakash, and each of us will take about 10 minutes to speak on the subject, speaking of the sacred. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mani. Good evening, everybody. I'm looking at the clock here. I'll speak only for 10 minutes. Before I introduce this topic of the sacred, I'd like to quote a poem by one of the greatest yogis and poets of Karnataka, Shishna Sharif Saab. And in this short poem, he sums up how the mantra, which is the sacred sound, is the bridge between spiritual practice and poetry. The poem goes something like this. I wish I could sing it. I can't sing it. I'm only going to quote it. Shri Guru Mantrava Majade Bhajisalu Bhoga Sampada Sukhavaguvudu. ಎರಡಕ್ಷರಗಳ ಬಿಡದೆ ಜಪಿಸಲು ಬೇಕಾದ ಒಡವೆತ ದೊರಕುವುದು. ಮೂರಕ್ಷರಗಳ ಸಾರವ ಭಜಿಸಲು ಘೋರ ದುಃಖವು ಅಡಗುವುದು. ನಾಲ್ಕಕ್ಷರಗಳ ಏಕಾಗಿ ಭಜಿಸಲು ಶೋಕ ಸಾಗರವು ಕರಗುವುದು. ಶಿಶುನಾಳಧೀಶನ ಐದಕ್ಷರದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಸಮಾಕ್ಷನ ಪದ ದೊರಕುವುದು. Mantra, in Indian spiritual tradition, mantra is a sacred formula which is given to a seeker by a guru. And the texts always tell us the mantra has to come from a guru, otherwise it does not work. But who is a guru? The guru is not a person, is a principle. In India, there's been a lot of hero worshipping of gurus, and we see the effects of this. But guru is a principle, not a person. And guru need not be a human guru. For somebody, a book can become a guru, and this mantra can come to the seeker not in the wakeful state, it can come in the dream state, or in the sleep state, or in deep states of absorption. Any state, it can come to you in any state. And it is a meaningless jumble of sounds. The greatest mantras are seed mantras. They do not have any rational meaning, but they have affective meaning. They impact a body and the mind. And see, it's very interesting to see that in Indian tradition, the greatest of our poets have been great yogis. And their words have a lot more power on us than the words of poets who were not yogis. For example, Kalidasa, if you listen to his Shyamanadandakam, is magnificent poetry, but also it is an expansion of a single seed syllable. So seed syllable, short mantras, one letter mantra, two letter mantra, three letter mantra, four letter, etc. Any length, it can vary. And Sharif Saab is saying the mantra has to be given by the Guru, and you have to repeat it constantly. Because repetition is a principle which is common to both mantra practice and also, for example, poetry. In poetry, rhyme is an expression of the principle of repetition. Meter is that. So, if you repeatedly practice it, he says, you get everything. Then he's talking about one letter mantra, two letter mantra, three letter mantra, and then he says 5-letter mantra, and for 5-letter mantra, the mantra that he mentions is not given in any book of mantra shastra. This is something that has come to him from within, something that's flashed in his mind. It's the name of the temple deity of his village, Shishunada Disha. Normally, 5-letter mantra is supposed to be Panchakshara mantra, but Sharif is Shishunada Disha. So, mantra is not something ready made. Mantras can be, there is a lot of innovation in the area of mantra. For example, Tukaram got his mantra from Namdev in a dream. And the mantra he got was Ramakrishna Hari, Jai Jai Ramakrishna Hari. And this mantra is not found in any one of the texts of Mantra Shastra in Sanskrit. So there is a scope for greater spontaneity and so on. And he says, when you chant the 5-letter mantra, Shishunadadhishana Aidaksharadali, these 5 letters, Asamakshana Padanesihudu. Asamaksha is Lord Shiva, Shiva, the principle of consciousness. Asamakshana Pada, the word Pada here means status, position, but it also means songs. So this also leads to the birth of songs. So mantra will lead to poetry. And for example, we have many poetic texts in India. In Malayalam, there is a text called Sri Narayaniyam by Narayana Pattapadri, which is a translation, condensed translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Whenever people get into problem, they chant it, and it has the immediate effect. Why? Because in this, in the verse of this, in the words of this text, the author Narayana Pattapadri has hidden so many seed syllables, bijaksharas, from Pancharatra tradition. They're called Sasata mantras. So it's the mantra which gives power to poetry. And either one can come to this from the end of mantra, or mantra can also come spontaneously. And Aurobindo said all great poetry tends towards mantra. But there's a basic difference between mantra and poetry. Poetry can become mantric, but it cannot become mantra, because mantra ultimately has no meaning like poetry. Poetry cannot give up some element of direct meaning, what in Sanskrit poetics they call abhidha. Abhidha is the springboard of Vyanjana, of suggestions and other metaphors and so on. So poetry cannot give up the first level meaning, there's referential meaning, because that is the basis. But mantra need not have this. Though sometimes words with lexical meanings are found in mantra, it's not because of that they work, it's because of the power of repetition. And the power of repetition, the principle of repetition, is a very important element in all arts, whether visual arts or verbal arts or dance and music. And ultimately, mantra, like poetry and art, is a manifestation of principle of rhythm, principle what is in yogic science is called nada. So an expansion of nada. And yogis feel this within and without. And there's a famous song by Kaivala Narayana Tata, another great Telugu mystic from Karnataka, Nadamu Vinaleda, Dashavida, Nadamu Vinaleda. Haven't you heard those 10 notes within? So the music is within you. And when music becomes manifest as Anahada Nada, unheard sound becomes heard, then it becomes poetry. And just one more thing about the sacred. In Indian tradition, there is no strict distinction between the sacred and the profane. This may be true of other traditions, not in Indian tradition. The, whatever profane itself can become sacred, provided it's used for a spiritual purpose. So I think I've taken enough time. Okay, I'll stop here.
Um, in my presentation, I'll just reflect on three words from the title, um, speaking to sacred. How does one speak to or of the implicate order of the universe? To what is true but not recognized as such, at least not by everyone. The cosmos is intrinsically worthy of reverence. Its materiality or thingness, and that of everything within it. Its perceptible beauty, the mystery of those aspects beyond our visual or cognitive grasp. All these inspire something spacious in our consciousness, sensations, intuitions, the suspicion that there is a vastness of which we are a part, but from which we quite often feel a part. Yet, language can serve to further estrange us. The very act of rendering something into existence requires a stepping out and taking apart. Naming is a double-edged operation. If something is X, it is because it is not Y. Or else not quite Y, but rather XY or YX or maybe even Z appearing as other than itself. It is via difference, through the making of distinctions, that meaning is made. Language stabilizes the complex and continuous dance of energy and molecules into nameable forms. Our conceptual categories and linguistic conventions attempt to tame the near infinite pluralities in which we exist. The word sacred is a past participle of sacre, to set apart. It derives from the French sacré, from the Latin sacer, from a root seen also in the word sanus, meaning sane, and in the Greek saos, safe. We could paraphrase what I have just said much more simply as sacred, to set apart for safety and sanity. But this would imply that something must be done to matter for it to become sacred, that the sacred is an extrinsic, not intrinsic attribute. Yet, revered teachers, Jesus, Buddha, and celebrated teachings, Upanishadic, shamanic, propose the very opposite. They speak of revelation, discovery, experience. These terms imply the discovery of something that already exists. Students are urged to contemplate and discover first principles for themselves. Prayer, meditation, ceremonies, rituals, etc., are the crucible for a gradual confirmation and realization of the truth and integrity of teachings. Practice transmutes mere knowledge into active knowing. Teaching revealed in/as experience, an aid memoir and a path to remembering. What does this say about the etymology of sacred noted above, in which it is deemed a consequence of human veneration and making? This idea, I would argue, is a trace effect of institutional religion's arrogation to itself of the right to determine what counts as sacred. And alongside that, the particular strand within European Enlightenment which triumphed over others and which deemed nature as inert and human agency as the activating force breathing life into dead matter. The world as intrinsically worthy of respect and reverence. To greet the world from this premise is to language the sacred from a within, to draw on the methods and practices of a given tradition to access the interiority of consciousness and cosmos without denying each their specificity. It is not easy, and it can lead to linguistic mayhem, except at the hands of the most adept poet or philosopher, to stuttering, muttering, stammering, yammering, exhortation, exclamation, molten clarity, inchoate breakdown, prostration, frustration, imitation, repetition. It can, in short, beggar language. Language trips on itself as the internal pressure to find expression for emergent, incipient understandings builds and the seeker fears imploding. To allow the world to reveal itself is not simply to recognize, as in acknowledge, what has always been true, but to recognize, as in recomprehend, what has been hiding in plain sight. The process is deeply destabilizing. The astonishment and fright it can engender has produced its own term, horripilation. Even without recourse to a dictionary, one feels its meaning, hair standing erect in fear, in the effect on one's nerves of the very sound of it. A grammar lesson, conjugating the verb to be. I am, you are, he is, she is, we are, you are, they are. I, you, he, she, we, you, they, am, are, is. Subject and verb placed contiguously beside each other to make meaning. But the grammar of existence is relational. Subject and object are always already co-implicated, and every subject is always already plural. The Latin root of conjugate, conjugare, literally yoked together, captures this well. It would be far more accurate to conjugate the verb to be as follows. I inter am, you inter are, he inter is, she inter is, we inter are, you inter are, they inter are. Grammar, the rules of language, language, our perceptual lens. If we were to conjugate the verb to be to reflect things as they actually are, emerging from and existing in complex, evolving dynamics of interrelatedness, false assumptions of separateness, erroneous attributions of absolute or graded difference within humanly invented hierarchies like caste or race will have to be set aside as delusory. Grammatical conventions, at least in English, contribute to obscuring the dynamics that shape how we have come to misperceive the world as we have. This process recalls the other meaning of grammar: magic, incantation, spells. Are our grammatical rules casting a spell on truth, rendering reality other than itself? Would the negation of nature or other beings be possible if existence were understood as a form of webbing? That we inter are have always been so? Know you without me, know you that is not also me, yet you, me, not interchangeable, but exquisitely distinct, like leaves on a tree, no two of which are identical. This is the implicate order of the universe. To honor it is to speak adequately to the sacred.
Thank you. There is a shop in Hong Kong called Goods of Desire, GOD. Sometimes I would drop in to browse, window shopping. I never bought anything there. And every time I said the other word, the word that you get when you combine the three letters of G and O and D, this is what I was reminded of, that there was nothing there for me. But one day, I was given a tasting, or maybe the scent of a taste, or maybe the imagination of, and the dream of, and the memory of, the touch of, the residual vibrance of, the faded vision of, the memory of an echo of a probable taste. But really, none of those descriptions are accurate, and one would have to use a simile. It was like a piercing. I was grazing in some valley, and a long hook just reached out and tapped me. Anyway, the meaning of the word made up with the letters G and O and D changed. All of this had nothing to do with Religion. But the internal event that I just spoke about unraveled as mantra. It could have had something to do with my love for poetry. I began to consider mantra as a repository, as a storehouse of secrets, and through whose layers and bridges I would go. And I then thought I had become quite useless to the rest of the world, so I went and did a PhD in religious studies. This also meant Vedic studies, Mimamsa, Tantrism, and Shaktism, etc., etc., etc. And then, sitting on top of a mountain of books, there was no bridge in sight. So I went back down into the field. My research methodology became fieldwork, and I had a lot of questions. How do mantras work? Does pronunciation matter? Can a guru take back a mantra? Do I choose a devata or does the devata choose me? What is a devata? Do devatas exist? Where? How to tell if a vision is real or did I imagine it? Is Shruti an old story or can we perceive mantras today? Can there be new mantras? If mantras guarantee results, where is the need for bhakti? What is the difference between Vedic and Tantric revelations? My research questions were also my own quest. I spoke to many sadhakas and gurus. Amritanandanatha Saraswati, Siddheshwarananda Bharati, Shivananda Puri, Madhavananda Saraswati, and many, many others. And I recorded our discussions. Here are some of my findings from then. Vision is not just optical, it involves all senses and beyond. Revelation is an ongoing process, not just from thousands of years ago, but last month, last week, yesterday, today, and now. Many new mantras, that is, mantras not previously documented, are in circulation today. What scholarship studies is usually many centuries old and only the tip of the iceberg. Much, much more information is out there among sadhakas, passed on from guru to shishya, guru mukhatah, as they say, and not documented anywhere. During my research, I met numerous people who had found friendships with specific devatas. Many received mantras from devatas whom they saw and spoke to. Some had seen devatas forming from mantras. One had seen different devatas as a result of different combinations of syllables. Yes, there were ways to tell if experience was real or imagined. Devatas seem to be another species, beings who inhabit other realms and as co-creators and influencers and shapers in the materialization and transformation of our world, inside us and outside us. The vision of a devata seemed to be a collaborative process between the sadhaka and the devata. Imagination and intention was the invitation, a frame into which the devata enters. Imagination is a crucial part of vision. One may think of mantras as natural sound forms present in the Vijnanamaya Kosha, and they take us to the Anandamaya Kosha where the devatas live. The diversity on the ground was astounding, as if there were as many ways as there were people. So many ways in which people were doing sadhana, speaking of and experiencing the sacred in their lives. Most questions seeking the one definite answer were confounded. In fact, it was a jungle with no roads, and I was just documenting fragments of some journeys through it. Experience and trial, an inward focus or attention to internal events. In each case, it was not the prescribed methodologies, but the doing of sadhana that revealed the next step. In fact, experience of the sacred was its own road, a road that bypassed institutionalization. Some gurus told me in discussions that the connections between Veda and Tantra had been lost, simply lost. Tantra collected had become Veda, that's all. In fact, instead of those kind of historical traditions as a way to describe and classify mantras, I found myself classifying mantras differently. Seen mantras, heard mantras, hidden mantras, lost mantras, dormant mantras, mantras given silently, mantras done unconsciously, and even no mantra. I spent some time in spaces that were conducive to attention and apprehension. I took initiation in mantras from some gurus and went into inner silence. You can read about some of my encounters and discussions and conclusions in my recent book, Living Mantra. I will conclude with a poem. Void Plate. When the gates of spring squeaked in the mouths of birds, I put out a hand. When the gates of spring squeaked in the mouths of birds, I put out a hand, sunflower seeds embedded in my flesh. A bare-breasted mother refilled the feeder with liquid suet. Fat, river, love, fire, forest. Oh, the knots on Osage for fire to suckle. Soot-faced I stood, uncurling fruit drops. I could not feed the fire, considering it untouchable. My only way was through it. The only way to knowledge is through God, I had to say. And what is God? She had to say. The void is the plate, engraving zigzag, fire the flare of sound through it, voice ashen. Is this writing? Then where is my tongue? I've abandoned the pail and pitched my tent on seesaw water. What if I am my own witness? My ears believe each other.
Uh, I'd like to talk about a journey today that we did to the westernmost tip of India, to a place called Kutch, about 9 or 10 years ago. We were in search of Kabir. And I remember the moment when a singer we were recording and listening to sang, Kabir कुआं एक है, पनिहारी अनेक, बर्तन सबके न्यारे हैं, पर नीर एक का एक. Kabir says the well is one, water bearers, water drawers, many. Their pots are of different shapes and size, but the water in them is one. A familiar doha. But then he slid into a Sindhi bet. Hek kasar dar lak, sain sandas girkiyu, jiyan kiyan parak, tiyan sahib, samu. This is Shah Abdul Latif Bhetai, an 18th century Sindhi Sufi poet whose living oral tradition thrives much more on that side of the border, Pakistan, but also survives in Rajasthan and Kutch. And there began a little beginning of a love affair with this new voice that began to beckon inexorably. Because the language was alien, Sindhi. And yet it was so resonant with the voice of Kabir in so many ways. I think Kabir gets the image of cutting off the head, symbolic of the ego, from the Sufi world. But this person has come a couple of centuries later. And yet, he was drawing us into a world that was very, very, very different. A world peopled with characters and personalities and stories and kisse. So I don't have much time here with you. All I'm going to do is read a few translations of the poems and the book that emerged 9 or 10 years later, Journeys with Shah Abdul Latif Bhetai. Bhetai, like many other Sufis, draws on love legends, famous events that may have taken place in history but then become so much a part of the people's imagination that they get legendified, mythified, lore accrues around it. Singers sing it, poets write about it, like Heer Ranja. In Shah Latif's case, he speaks in the voice of many women who were part of star-crossed love affairs. So these stories began to unfurl. I'm just going to share a few poems and a little bit of the backstories, and then end, if we have time, with a song. So the poem would come like a hook without knowing anything. Dark night, frail pot, no way to swim, yet she flung herself in. She did not wait, nor hesitate. The stormy river turned around. Love turned it into higher ground. And then the story of Sohini emerges, a potter's daughter in love with Izzat Beg, who becomes a fakir in her love, married off forcibly to a man of her own community, safely tucked away in a respectable marriage. And yet, so long since I saw him, I wonder how my sweetheart is. Eyes overflow with love. They burst into rivers and seas. So long since I saw him, I wonder how my sweetheart is. The pain of his love entwines me like a creeper. So long since I saw him. I wonder how my sweetheart is. 1,000 suns have set, lying in wait for him. But Sohini doesn't wait. She takes the plunge into the river every night and goes and meets with her lover on the other side. And slowly the image of the river begins to emerge as a metaphor for life. This bank, security, establishment, status quo, pragmatism, rationality. The other shore, madness, transgression, love. I might even say compassion. It takes a great act of transgression and idealism to be compassionate, actually. So this becomes an image in Shah Latif for an invitation to us always to take the plunge for whatever it is that beckons from the other side of the shore. And each of us have our own stories. Standing at the edge, they cry out, "My love," but they only love their own lives. Some claim, "I'm all yours," but wet only their big toe. He comes to those who plunge in with a smile. Neither here nor there, poor girls in the thick of it. He waits on the other bank, swirls of water engulf her. Dive deeper, don't think. He's kind to those who drown. So that's one story. Here comes another hook. In a high palace, the king, but down on the ground, the bard. But the strains of his surando is a musical instrument, a violin, penetrated the palace walls. Into his inner chamber, the king invited the minstrel. No woman servant could enter unbidden. The king offered him a bejeweled Arab steed. The beggar, minstrel, says Shah Latif, turn down the price. Your royal head, he said, is what I want. Another story, Sorat. A king, enraptured by the music of a wandering minstrel, invites him into his palace and says, you play so beautifully, you've melted me. Ask for whatever you want. And he says, I ask for your head. The surando struck a murderous chord. In a flash, the king saw the truth of the bard. Whipping out his dagger, he chopped off his head. So here you see the figure of the bard emerges as a guru who asks for the price of the head. And interestingly, that which makes the fortress of your ego melt and fall is music. I'll just read a few more. My God, we're almost out of time. Okay. Few more random poems about eyes. I scrambled to stop these eyes, but they leapt across the sleeping world and went to meet with him. They came back delighted, landing me in trouble. They love a good fight, these eyes. Once started, they just won't stop. Clouds gather heat in the sky. They don't shower delicately. These tears burst like the monsoon. They didn't take my consent, these eyes, before falling in love. They've strayed into a dangerous market where no one haggles and the price is steep. You offer your deal, your life, to close the deal. And maybe a couple of poems on reason and rationality. I look for a limit, but you are out of the box, your beauty beyond speech. Length or breadth cannot capture you. Here, lovers fret and chafe, restless with ardor. There, the beloved is indifferent, unimpressed. Reason is baffled and skulks in shame. Staggered by your immensity, it's no longer cocky. It cannot bear the sight of you. Reason is stunned. You are beyond its grasp. How would the blind bear witness to a beauty such as yours? Yeah. Can I have the mics? So this song is about Sasi, who's taken off into the desert in search of her love, being carried away on camel back. And for her, she has realized that this sorrow of being separated from her love is the path of realization. It's not an impediment. But sur, as they say in Sindhi, sorrow, is through which her beloved comes to her. This needs to be high. This needs to